Hello everyone, I'm thankful for another day to study with you. Today we're talking about 1 Samuel chapter 24. 1 Samuel 24, we're going to talk about David sparing Saul's life. Interesting if you've been following the story with us. In terms of our Bible timeline, where are we in history? Well, we are probably between the years of 1015 BC and 1010 BC. Our character section for this chapter is relatively short. We're going to talk about David. He had been selected by God to be the next king of Israel. He wasn't king yet, though. Saul was still the king, and Saul really hated David, and he was constantly trying to chase him down and kill him. That's what we're going to read about in our outline section. Now we have our map, just one place to highlight here. David and his men were hiding from Saul in a place called En-Gedi, which is very close to the western coast of the Dead Sea or the Salt Sea. There are 22 verses in this chapter, and I've got them all under one section. David spares Saul in the cave of En-Gedi. So Saul received news that David and his band of men were hiding out in the wilderness of En-Gedi. And so he took 3,000 men down there and he went to look for David near the Wild Goats Rock. That name was too good not to include on the outline. While searching, Saul went into a cave to, quote, relieve himself. Now, commentators seem to be in disagreement about what exactly that means. Some people said that he was taking a nap, he was resting in the cool of the cave. Other people said it means that he was going to the bathroom in the cave. But either way, he was unaware that David and his men were actually hiding in the back of the cave. So this must have been a pretty sizable opening in the rock. Now, David's men thought, this is the opportunity. Sneak up on Saul, kill him, and then, all of our problems are solved. But David didn't want to kill who he called, quote, the Lord's anointed one. So instead, he snuck up on Saul and he cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Saul, who was completely unaware of his surroundings, finished relieving himself, and he got up and he exited the cave. David followed him out, and he called to him, he got his attention, and David bowed down to him. David wanted Saul to know that even though Saul had been terrible to him, he didn't have any ill will towards the king. He didn't want to do violence to the king. And as evidence of that, he showed Saul the corner of his robe, basically saying, look, I could have killed you, and I chose not to. Saul's life wasn't David's to take, but David did appeal to God to see that justice was done in the end. As soon as David had finished speaking, Saul's hard heart was softened, and he actually admitted that David was a better man than him, a more righteous man than him, and that David had returned good for all of the evil that he had done to David. Interestingly, Saul confesses here that one day David would be the king over Israel, and he asked David to swear to him that in that day he would not take his vengeance out on Saul's relatives, on Saul's descendants. David was fine with making that commitment, and he swore that oath to Saul. And after their conversation, David went back to the stronghold where they were stationed, and Saul took his 3,000 men and returned home. And now for our application section. Even though Saul was dishonorable in character, David still showed him respect because of the position that God had given him. This is important for modern Christians to keep in mind. There are several verses in the New Testament that instruct Christians to respect their leaders, both national leaders and spiritual leaders in the church. It is possible to respect the office that a person holds, even when the person who's holding that office currently is dishonorable in character. That's hard to do, but important to apply because there are chapters like Romans 13 that tell us that the authority structures in the world and those who hold positions of authority are ordained by God.